Hello folks, this is Sullla once again with another patch preview. This is for the League System patch. Normally patches are associated with the champion release, but this one is not. This feature was very popular on the channel for the last patch, so I will continue it here. I will try to go through what's in the patch notes and give you my thoughts on it. So we'll see how long. This will probably take 20 to 30 minutes because this is a fairly large patch. And the first thing up right here at the top, the new league system has arrived for ranked play. This is the new system. They're replacing a straight number for ELO with a series of different tiers and divisions. So you will be in something like Silver 3 or Gold 2 or what have you. And there's a system of advancement. If you win matches, you can move up to the next tier, the next division. If you lose too many matches, you can get relegated down into a lower one. Although, once you hit a certain point, you can't move down any longer. I believe once you're silver, you can't move down to bronze. Once you're gold, you can't get relegated back into silver, and so on and so forth. So that's the whole idea there. If you reach the top, if you hit go past diamond level to what they call challenger tier, then you're sort of like in this, you achieve like semi-pro status or something like that. I don't think that that will apply to most people because that's pretty rare, and they're no longer going to display wins and losses. Anyway, so what are my thoughts about this system? I don't really have much to say about it, to be honest. I'm not familiar with this system. It's basically the system that StarCraft 2 uses. And some people like it and some people don't, but I don't really have strong opinions one way or the other. I need more time to see this system in action and figure out what it's actually like. As of right now, on paper, it sounds interesting, but again, I need to see it in action. I need to see how it plays out in practice before I can give one strong opinion one way or the other. So, I mean, it seems fine. I don't think it's really going to change that much. I guess it makes things a little bit more interesting. It's probably a little bit nicer for the average player who has a chance to see themselves move up to a new tier or a new division, whatever they're called. I mean, it gives them that sense of progress, whereas just moving from one number to another didn't seem like it really affected that much. Anyway, the biggest change here is probably right this. The time penalties for Q dodging have been shortened, and you now lose league points if you dodge a Q. I do approve that. I know that sometimes people will troll in Champion Select, and you feel like you have to dodge. I feel like that's still an improvement, though, because the previous penalty was basically nothing. You'd had like a half-hour time penalty, so there was essentially no penalty for Q dodging whatsoever, beyond just not being able to play a ranked game for 30 minutes. So I do think it's better to have some kind of penalty over no penalty at all. But I also hope that we'll be able to report players from the staging screen soon, because that's a serious thing that's missing in the tribunal system, that you can't report people until a game actually ends. And that is problematic because I have definitely seen people who were just absolute jerks on the champion select screen, and you'd have to play out a full match with them to report them. And I didn't want to do that, so I just dodged. But anyway, I do think it's better to have some kind of penalty for dodging, because it's been taking way too much time to get a ranked queue. Oftentimes, you know, you'll wait and then you'll queue up and then someone dodges, and you queue up again and someone dodges, and you queue up again and someone dodges. And just if someone doesn't like something, they just leave. So it's better to have some kind of minor penalty over having no penalty at all. Anyway, we'll find out more about that system as we go along. Annie's got a new visual upgrade. This is, I think, the third time her character model has been upgraded since I've been playing this game, to the second or third time. The updates look pretty good overall. It seems like an improvement. I'm not a huge fan of the splash art. Here, I'll go ahead and open this up. I'm not a huge fan of the splash art, which is not shown here, but the actual in-game character model I think looks pretty good, except I don't know about Annie's little rabbit ears or whatever these things are. They feel like they've been emphasized a little bit more than they were before. There's no picture of the Annie skin that I have. There's no Annie in Wonderland picture here, which is a shame, but that model's been upgraded in game too. The biggest upgrade is on the Goth Annie model, which I always thought looked awful before, but now actually looks pretty interesting. It's still not my kind of thing, but it looks a lot different. And apparently they're going to be selling that now for people who didn't have it before. I'm not entirely on board with that, but if you want Goth Annie now, you can buy it. Alright, actual gameplay changes. Blitzcrank, nerfs coming in. This is actually a big nerf. Base mana reduced from 300 to 240. And then they also increased the cost of the rocket grab. That in and of itself, not that big a deal. It's a minor nerf, but this is a very big deal. Remember, Blitzcrank's passive, his mana barrier, works off of how much mana he has. So this is a nerf not only to how much he can use rocket grab, but also to how much passive shield he gets when he gets low on health. So this actually makes it a lot harder for Blitzcrank to play in the early game. Use 2 grabs and he's out of mana. You know, they're each 120. Now he only has 240 mana. If you use 2 grabs at level 1, boom, you're out of mana. You can't do anything. So this is a sizable nerf. We will see if this gets people to stop playing Blitzcrank. I don't know, but this one does hurt him. Nerf on Cho'Gath, they decreased the silence duration. This is not huge, but it does definitely affect him. The 3-second silence on his Feral Scream has been one of the most attractive things of playing Cho'Gath. Now it's down to 2.5, and it's actually lower at all ranks. 1.5 to 2.5 instead of 2 to 3. This actually probably hits him more at level 1, because going from 2 to 1.5 is a bigger drop off than going from 3 to 2.5. It's not a huge issue. Most people max this skill first on Cho'Gath if he's laning. When they're jungling, they tend to max his Vorpal Spikes first. So this isn't huge, but it does hit him and it does hurt him a bit. I don't think that this will change the playability of Cho'Gath that much. He's a very strong option. He's particularly strong as a jungler. He's being used a ton in competitive play right now as one of the top tier junglers. I don't think that this will be enough to change that, but it is a little bit of a hit to his overall kit, and it reduces his crowd control by a little bit. Diana looks like more of a bug fix here, adjusted orbs to better account for enemy model size. I guess that just means that maybe they increased the size of the orbs. Either increased or decreased the size of the orbs. But anyway, this looks like more of a visual thing than anything else. Elise has been getting nerfs, and that's because she's considered to be one of the top champions in the game right now. This is pretty standard. They gave her a whole bunch of buffs when she came out, and of course they overbuffed her into a state where she was very strong. She's been getting banned constantly in competitive play. So this is a very, very, very big nerf to Elise. Instead of a flat 60 mana cost on her Neurotoxin, I believe that this is her Q. I'm not 100%. I'd have to look back at that. Don't play Elise. I believe that this is her Q. But they've increased the cost from a flat 60 up to a scaling starting at 80 and then going up to 100. I believe that this is a skill that people max first on Elise. I should have gone and checked that before doing this video. I believe that this is what people max first on her. And to go from a flat 60 to 100 mana is a very big deal. This means that she will have to build more mana. She can't just build straight tankiness the way that she does right now. And it will make it much, much more difficult for her to spam this skill, which she uses to harass the opponent. So again, this is very sizable. This will hurt Elise a lot. Very sizable nerf here. To go from 60 to 100 means that you run out of mana much, much faster. And then as a trade-off, they reduce the mana cost of Cocoon, but that isn't enough to balance out the nerf to Neurotoxin. I believe that this is her E skill, the one that stuns, the skill shot stun. I believe that's what this is. So that's a little bit of a help, but that tends to be a 1-point skill on Elise, so it doesn't change that much. And it's on a long cooldown, so it is not nearly enough to offset the nerf to her Neurotoxin. Okay, other champs, this one, they actually are now writing in some explanations into the patch preview. They said that this is focused on AP Ezreal. I don't think it is, actually. I think it's just a straight nerf to Ezreal, period. I really don't think this is a target at AP Ezreal. It's just everyone still keeps playing Ezreal, so he's just continuing to get modest nerfs over and over and over again. I suspect that Riot will go too far and make him unplayable, which is what they usually tend to do. But as of right now, everyone is still playing Ezreal, so the past nerfs have not been enough to stop that. They reduced his base movement speed. 325 is the lowest base movement speed in the game, so they've cut him down to the lowest base movement speed now. We'll see how much that hurts him. It actually does matter. The base movement speeds are important. We'll see if that changes anything. Rising Spell Force, the duration, 5 seconds instead of 6. This is Ezreal's passive, so it gives him less time to stack up his passive attack speed. That hurts too, as well. And then True Shot Barrage, damage fall off per hit, increased to 10% from 8%. So again, they say that this is APS, but it really is pretty much just straight Ezreal nerf. I'm not buying the APS. These are all nerfs that hit AD Ezreal just as much. In fact, the Rising Spell Force, his passive hits AD Ezreal much, much more than AP Ezreal. So, not buying this little description right here. Again, they're just sort of across-the-board nerfs here. What this means is his True Shot Barrage, often used for clearing minion waves or as a area of effect ultimate in a team fight. It just will do less damage as it hits multiple targets. So if you're clearing that creep wave, the creeps in the back won't take nearly as much damage. Overall, nothing here is game-breaking for Ezreal, but these nerfs add up over time, and he's definitely lowering out in power. So we'll see if there's a swap from everyone playing Ezreal to people playing Corki. Those champions are the two that are usually interchangeable. If people are playing Ezreal, they're not playing Corki. If they are playing Corki, they're not playing Ezreal. So we'll see. If you see fewer Blitzcranks, you'll see fewer Ezreals, because Ezreal is one of the best counters to Blitzcrank, and Blitz has been very popular for quite a while now. Heimerdinger quality of life upgrades now displays the timer when he gets his next ammo charge. Turrets will try to prioritize enemies hit by Heimer's autos or his grenades. And they removed the cast time from upgrade. This was pretty short. I think it was only like a half-second cast time. So this is not going to do much to help Heimer. I mean, I suppose these are nice, but he's a very underpowered champ right now. He's not popular, and this is not going to do anything to get people playing Heimerdinger. He fits into a very, very niche pick, which is sort of a straight pushing comp. He's good at that, and that's basically it. So don't expect to see Heimer played anytime soon. Katarina. More nerfs for Katarina. Katarina is finally getting to the point where you're not really going to see people playing her much anymore. Well, maybe that's not true. Anyone who has that much mobility is going to be popular, but we're starting to get to the point where Kat is just being nerfed to the point where she's not that useful anymore. So a nerf to bouncing blades, a nerfing to scaling. Starts at the same value, 60, but at max rank, 160 instead of 180. So reducing the damage there. This is the killer nerf here, though. Shumpo, the damage reduction is cut in half. Instead of a 3-second damage reduction, only 1.5. That is a very serious nerf right there. That damage reduction is what allows Kat to jump into the middle of the enemy team and get off an ult or get off her W. I'm afraid I don't know the name of that skill off the top of my head, but allows her to get off her ult or Death Lotus or her W. I think it's Spinning Slash or something like that, something along those lines. But the damage reduction is what allows her to play aggressively. And by cutting the reduction from 3 seconds to 1.5, it just makes her a lot more vulnerable. 3 seconds is enough time to get in, hit W, and walk out. 1.5 seconds is not enough time to Shumpo in and then do your damage and walk out. So this makes her much more vulnerable. And there's a tiny buff here. They're increasing the scaling on her ultimate. Increase the ratio to 2 from 1.75. Nice, I guess, but this is fairly modest overall. This is an increase of 1.75 to 2. That is only like a 15 to 20% increase. I mean, it's nice, but it's not that noticeable. So once again, this is a very big nerf. Very, very big. This is more modest, but it still hurts. And again, this is about the third or fourth patch in a row that these nerfs have been adding up. So you keep putting these minor nerfs on over and over again. They do add up over time. So we will likely see less Cat going forward in the future. We'll see if Riot stops here or keeps going. Kennen. This is a pretty big buff to Kennen. No longer has an energy cost to use Slicing Maelstrom. I believe that that's his ultimate. Pretty sure that that's his ult. So that's a pretty big deal for an energy-based champion. Energy-based champions always have trouble managing their energy. So if he can ult without having to worry about energy, that's, as I said, that's a big deal. That helps him a lot. So perhaps we'll see Kennen come back a little bit. He has fallen out of favor for a while. We've actually seen a little bit more AD Kennen than AP Kennen in competitive play recently. Lulu has been the strongest support, or very close to that, for a while now. They are cutting down on Lulu's damage from picks. Let's see. Well, actually what they've done is no, that's funny. They've reduced the damage from picks. This is the passive on Lulu. They've reduced it. It's lower at early ranks. So they've adjusted it from 15 to 9 at first level. But it's actually increased at higher levels, which is kind of funny. I don't think that Lulu should be getting any kind of buffs right now, if anything. I think that I would expect this to just be like 9 to 87, a straight nerf. But no, they've lowered the base value and increased the scaling. So that's a nerf in the sense that supports are usually low level. Supports don't hit 18 all that often in games. Supports, it's more important what they do at level 1. So this is a nerf, but it's not much of one. It's fairly modest. So this is not going to do anything to stop people playing Lulu, because people are not picking her for the damage on picks. Let's just put it that way. They're picking her for the damage on Glitter Lance, for the slow, for her awesome polymorph, and for her incredible ult that's really good in team fights. So that's not going to do anything to stop people from playing Lulu. Master Yi, APE, got a pretty big hit in this patch. A pretty big hit on AP Master Yi. Now, it might not look like that, but it is. They have adjusted Meditate, and they've reworked the skill pretty seriously. What they did was they increased the base amount from the heal. You can see the base amount went up 200, 350, 500, 650, 800, from 140, 280, 420, 560, 700. It's a higher base value at every single rank. And they also decreased the mana cost. Well, they decreased it at lower levels. They decreased it. It stays the same at max rank. It's still 110 at max rank, but it's now only 50 at rank 1. But here's where they killed Meditate. They cut the ability power ratio in half. And the higher scaling, the higher base value does not make up for the fact that the scaling got cut in half. That crazy ability power ratio, the fact that it was a 4.0 ratio on AP Master Yi, that's what made his Meditate so strong. So by cutting that in half, they've hurt Master Yi's Meditate a lot. Again, this is directed at AP Master Yi, so this makes that a lot weaker. This is overall a nerf to AP Master Yi. Sure, it's nice that the mana cost is lower, it's nice that the base value is higher, but I mean, that's not what made Meditate good. What made it good was the fact that you could get, 200 AP, and then as soon as you meditated, you were full health again instantly. If the other person didn't have some kind of crowd control to knock you out of it, because you had that, you had that crazy value, 4.0 AP ratio. So this is a nerf overall. Might be a little bit better at lower rank, but it's a nerf overall for sure. Misfortune. Misfortune's very popular right now, both in competitive play and in solo queue, due to the fact that she just is such a lane bully, and the fact that her ultimate deals tremendous damage. Great AoE damage in a team fight. It's pretty easy to set that up. You have like Malphite go in and knock the enemy team up, and then Misfortune ults and they all just die. So they are reducing the scaling on her ultimate bullet time. It was actually really low before, then they increased it, and now it's being lowered again. So that's an oops, our bad on the part of Riot. So they're lowering it from 0.45 to 0.35. So she can't stack damage and just get as much crazy damage on her ult. Again, this probably will not be enough to stop people playing MF. I expect to see more Misfortune nerfs in the days ahead. They've also reworked the targeting cone somewhat. I'm not exactly sure what this is referring to. Apparently the targeting cone was a little bit wonky in terms of how it worked. So this is sort of a bug fix, but it might actually be a nerf as well. And I'm not familiar enough with the Misfortune mechanics to see exactly what this is targeted at. Anyway, some weaker champions. Nasus now gets to double the bonus from Siphoning Strike on either a champion, a large minion, or a large monster. Large minion means a cannon creep in lane, or large monster means the big wraith, the big wolf, the big golem, or the red or blue buff. So this is not going to do much to get people playing Nasus, but I mean it will help. To get 6 extra points on Siphoning Strike, just make sure that anytime there's a cannon creep, you always last hit it with Siphoning Strike, because you'll get 6 damage instead of 3. So it's the same thing for Sion. He gets the same thing, gets twice the bonus stats from Enrage when he kills large targets, and it's the same thing for Veigar. When he hits something with the Baleful Strike, he gets 2 bonus AP for champion, large minion, or large monster. So similar thing for all 3 of them. All of them a little bit underplayed right now, especially Nasus and Sion. And that's just designed to help them. By the way, Sion, I'm wondering when people are going to play Sion again. He's really not he's not good in competitive play. He's actually really bad in competitive play. But he's a solo queue pub stomper, and for some reason people just stopped playing him. He was played constantly when he had a 1-to-1 AP ratio on his shield and on his stun, and then Riot changed it from a 1.0 AP ratio to a 0.9 AP ratio, so they nerfed it by 10%, and then all of a sudden everyone just instantly stopped playing him. It was like a 10% nerf, boom, he went from being in every game to never played, and it made no sense. Pure flavor of the month status. So Sion, he's not good in competitive play, but he's really good in solo queue. I mean, he just roams around the map, he stuns people, and then kills them. It's exactly what you want in solo queue. So I'm expecting that at some point they'll give him a little buff, and all of a sudden everyone will be playing Sion mid again at some point. Not right now, but we will see it at some point. Alright, Nunu. Nunu got a big nerf. Big time nerf, because Nunu has been one of the most popular supports in competitive play due to the way that his Blood Boil works. Base movement speed increased. He actually is one of the highest base movement speeds in the game now. That's kind of nice, but people weren't picking him for that. They're picking him for his Blood Boil, and this got heavily nerfed across the board. Very heavily nerfed. Duration cut by 3 seconds. Attack speed bonus cut across the board. Well, I guess not across the board because the base value is the same, but max of 45 instead of 65%, that's a very big nerf. Very, very big nerf. And the movement speed bonus cut too. At every single level, base value cut, and, well, I guess the scaling's still the same. It's 1% per point, but cut from 11% down to 8% and 15% to 12%. This skill was very heavily nerfed, so we will see. You perhaps will see less of those Kate Nunu knit lanes that are just impossible to deal with unless you have a very specific counterpicked lane. But Nunu has been very popular in competitive play. We'll see if this gets people to stop playing him. Heavy, heavy nerf to support Nunu here. Very heavy nerf. The fact that the attack speed buff was dropped by 20% is a very, very big deal. Olaf, big nerfs to Olaf. He got crushed in this patch. A couple things that were really, really big. And we may see Olaf drop out of the competitive scene as a result of this, which is fair because he's been dominant for a long time. Undertow, this is his axe throw. The slow now fades over the duration. That's a very big deal. So instead of the slow just being a flat slow, I don't know what the value is, but when you hit someone with the axe, instead of the slow just being there for, what is it, like 2 seconds, now the slow fades over the course of the slow's duration. That's a big nerf. That means it's much easier for people to run out of his axes. If before this, if you were able to hit your axes, which is a skill shot, then you could perma-slow someone. It's just axe, and then you pick up the axe and you slow them again, and then you pick up the axe and slow them again. That's going to be much, much more difficult to do now. Perhaps impossible to do now. So this is a big nerf. Vicious Strikes, cooldown increased. This is also a big nerf. Cooldown increased from 16 to 16 seconds from 12. Particularly because the Vicious Strikes is Olaf's, this is his W, I believe. This is his health, this is his lifesteal. This tends to be a 1-point skill for Olaf. People tend to just put 1 point in it and leave it there. So the value's just been increased by 33% from 12 up to 16. So this is a big nerf. Big, big nerf on what's normally a 1-point skill most of the time when people play Olaf. And then finally his ult was nerfed too. No longer passively grants bonus armor penetration, and now only grants bonus armor penetration when active. So you lose the passive armor penetration on his ult. Now you only get it when active. So again, a big nerf to Olaf. Now again, why are they doing this? The big problem is Olaf has been able to just do 2 things: stack health and stack cooldown reduction. So you see Olaf building things like Warmogs, getting Kindle Gems and turning it into Shirelias, and getting things like Locket. And he's just been able to build straight health and cooldown reduction, and then he runs around and he's super tanky and he's super hard to kill and he has crazy damage even though he's built straight tank for the most part. So they are trying to rebalance that, but if you are an Olaf player, this patch makes you a very sad person indeed, because these are heavy, heavy nerfs to Olaf. Will he still be played competitively? I don't know. We'll have to see. But he took a big, big hit in this patch. Very hard hit. Alright, Shaco. Shaco also got big nerfs in this patch. Don't really think that these were needed. This would be a case where Riot is going off of solo queue, where Shaco's a strong option, but Shaco is not used in competitive play at all. Anyway, the range reduced on his Deceive. This is a big nerf. 500 to 400 range is much smaller. I can't think of some skills off the top of my head that are 500 and 400, but this is a much smaller range. This will make it much harder for him to blink over walls and to get out of some situations. So this is his stealth move, and this will make it harder for him to run in and gank someone because the range is significantly smaller on his Deceive blink. And then they cut the slow reduction too on his 2-shift poison. They cut it from 20% at first rank down to 10%. I mean, again, a big reduction. That's value cut in half. Sure, the scaling's nice. It goes back to the same value, but Shaco's value is early game. I mean, he scales terribly into late game. He's an awful late game champ. All he can really do is split push in late game. What makes Shaco strong is his ability to do stealth ganks early on in the game. You know, he can hit level 3 faster than just about any other jungler, and then he pops out invisible and he kills you, and then, you know, he spams laugh and walks away. And that's what makes Shaco Shaco. So anything that hurts his early game really just crushes him as a champ. Again, I don't think this is necessary. Shaco is not used competitively. He's good in solo queue, but there are ways to defend against him. You just need to play very defensively for the first 10 to 15 minutes. If you can do that and not give up deaths, then you'll be fine. You'll likely win because of his late game weaknesses. So, not a big fan of these changes. I don't think they were necessary, but you just have to be aware of these. And if you're a Shaco player, again, it's more sad times for you, unfortunately. So we will be seeing less of Shaco going forward. Shen, nerfs to Shen. These are not huge nerfs to Shen, but they do, I mean, he's been nerfed a lot in the past. They do, you know, continue to weigh down over time. They reduce the cooldown reduction for auto attacks on Key Strike. Again, that's a fairly big deal. It means his Key Strike will be up a lot less often. And the cooldown reduction per attack while Feint is active is reduced from reduced to 2 seconds from 3. So you got cooldown reduction per attack while his Feint was up, and that's nerfed as well. I mean, again, not gigantic, but the nerfs do add up over time, as I said. So Shen, yeah, maybe you'll see him more in solo queue. He'll still likely be banned in competitive play, though. He's just so good for team play when you can coordinate the use of that ult. He's never been nearly as good in solo queue. It's just hard to coordinate the split pushing with teams when you're not, you know, on voice chat. Anyway, I already talked about Sion. Tristana. Tristana got a nice buff. Trista's been one of the weakest ADs in recent patches, but she got some very nice buffs here. particularly this one, the buff to her Q. Rapid Fire, mana cost reduced from 80 to 50. That's a big buff right there. Her Rapid Fire is her attack speed buff. This is something that typically people would never use in laning because, number one, the cooldown was really long, and then number two, because the mana cost was so high. 80 mana is a lot, particularly early in the game. Her Rapid Fire is usually her 1-point skill. Put 1 point in it, just leave it there, max it last. That's typically what people do with Tristana. Oftentimes, you'd see people not even taking Rapid Fire, not even taking a point until level 8. I've seen that a lot. Not even putting a point in it until level 8 because it was just such a weak skill in the laning phase. I don't think you'll be seeing that now. Reducing the mana almost by half, 80 to 50, this makes this a much more viable skill for laning, which means that if you get into an exchange, you can actually pop Rapid Fire and not run out of mana. So I do think that you will see Triss players probably taking Rapid Fire at level 4, but doing more with this, actually using it in laning. So this is a big buff. And then the damage on Explosive Shot, this is her E. This is the damage when it's used as an active. They increased the damage, it kept the base value the same, but they increased the scaling by quite a bit. Now 270 at max rank instead of 230. Again, that's a pretty big buff. A pretty big buff. It adds to Triss' whole combo. Generally, people max her Rocket Jump first, and then they max the Explosive Shot second. So this helps Tristana's mid-game, which is infamously weak. Triss is sort of famous for having a very weak mid-game. So this helps her mid-game a little bit. Will it be enough to see her played competitively? Probably not. I think we're going to need to see more buffs to Tristana or more nerfs to other ADs to see her rotated back in, but this helps quite a bit. If she gets another buff to, say her ult or her rocket jump, we could see her back in the rotation soon. So this is a nice little boost for Triss. Expect to see a little bit more of her up ahead. Tryndamere has completely dropped off the face of the earth, so he's getting buffs. They increased his base attack speed. That's kind of nice. This is much more significant. Fury Decay now begins at 8 seconds instead of after 5 seconds. That makes it much easier for him to keep his Fury stacks up. So this is a nice buff for him. This will help out his laning a lot, just because you don't have to worry about starting to lose your Fury nearly as fast. So this is a nice buff for him. I still don't think we're going to see Tryndamere very much. He's still kind of a niche pick. I've heard him described by some people as a weaker version of Nidalee, because he's kind of good at split pushing. His team fighting has never really been his forte, beyond the use of his ult. Tryndamere probably won't see too much of him, but this is a nice little buff. Maybe we'll get him seeing a little bit more play. Anyway, I already talked about Veigar. Vi, they updated her recommended items, fixed bugs. I think I said this last time, I think Vi's in a good place. I don't think that she needs much tweaking. She seems like she is a decently strong pick without being overpowered. I've seen her in the top lane. I've seen her in the jungle. I saw her used a little bit in the European qualifiers for the League Championship Series. So it seems like she's in a good place. If they could just fix all these bugs. It sounds like her Vault Breakers has all kinds of bugs with it. So anyway, hopefully if they can fix these bugs, I think she's fine. I think she's in a good place. Volibear, one of my favorite champions, even though I don't play him. Volibear, for some reason, low elo thinks that Volibear is really good, so that's why they're hesitant to buff him. They increased his base attack speed. His attack speed was too low. That's a little quality of life change. It's not going to get anyone playing Volibear more often. Riot seems to want him to be a jungler, but he's really not a good jungler. His kit is actually very well suited to dueling, which is why he makes for a good top laner. He's actually a very good duelist, 1v1. His weakness is he has no sustain, and that's what just kills him. He has no way to sustain himself in top lane, so anyone that can poke him reliably just ends up winning the lane. So it's kind of weird in that he's got this kit that's set up to be a duelist, but he can't really lane top because he gets out-sustained in lane, and he has problems with that, even with his passive. So anyway, this will help a little bit. You're still not going to see Volibear played. I mean, he's kind of just he's a bit of a joke champion, let's be honest. I'm still waiting for them to adjust his W, the one that gives him attack speed and allows him to bite people. What they need to do is they need to add more time before the stacks on his WDK. And I'm sorry I don't know the name of that skill either. But it's too hard to keep his stacks up on his W. His 3 stacks, it's too hard to keep them up. What they need to do is do what they did for Tryndamere in this patch, where they changed the Fury DK. If they can change it so the stacks last longer on Volibear, you'll see him played a lot more often. I've been waiting for months for them to make that change. We'll see if they ever do. But that's what Volibear needs to do to be played more often. It's just too hard to keep up his stacks. And if you can't do that, then he can't win trades in lane. Alright, items. There are a lot of item changes in this patch. Lots and lots of item changes. This one is the biggest one. They've created a new item. It's called Seeker's Arm Guard. This is the first time I've seen the name. I had heard that this item was coming. I didn't know the name. Recipe, Cloth, Cloth, Amplifying Tome. 30 armor, 25 ability power, and the unique passive that kills grant bonus armor and AP. Stacks up to 30 times. So you can get up to 15 more armor and 15 more ability power. So what? You can get up to 45 armor and up to 40 ability power. This item is designed to make it so mid laners can lane against those tanky AD assassins, your Pantheon, your Talon, your Kha'Zix, the guys who go mid and just rip through the fact that you've got these squishy APs who don't have any armor. So, you know, if you're playing Lux infamously starts with like 10 armor in this game. Up to this point in time, if I'm playing as Lux and I see I'm up against Pantheon, I have to start cloth armor or else I just get destroyed in lane. But there was nothing to build that cloth armor into. So they've created a new item to allow you to play an AP mid and actually itemize against an AD assassin who's going mid against you. So this is a much needed item. Very much need this item. So it fills a hole in the game's itemization. And then Zanya's Hourglass will build out of this new item, out of the Seeker's Arm Guard and a Needlessly Large Rod. They slightly increase the cost, but they also increase the ability power. So Zanya's itself is about the same strength. Basically the same overall. I would not say that's a buff or a nerf to Zanya's. It's basically they just adjusted the cost. They just adjusted the ability power so that it was in line with this new cost. Anyway, this is a really nice option for AP mids. Much appreciated, believe me. So now you can actually lane against those Kha'Zix in mid and stand a chance not to just get ripped apart, because there's an item that helps you with that. Okay, other changes. Sightstone. Sightstone is getting nerfed very heavily. Sightstone was definitely too cheap. So this mostly hits junglers and hits supports. I guess supports are the biggest target, but your Lee Sin jungler is not going to like this either. They might say that this is like a reworking because you do get more health, but it's basically a straight nerf. They've changed the recipe. Now the Sightstone is 950 gold instead of 700. 80 extra health is not worth 350 gold. That is not worth the price. So this is a straight nerf. They also increased the gold reward for killing Sightstone wards. That's nice. Doesn't really matter that much. But anyway, this is going to make it a lot harder for supports because it was pretty easy to get 700 gold on your first trip back to buy and just start out with the Sightstone. Now that's going to be much harder. You need 950 to go back to base and buy. And the Ruby Sightstone's the same thing. They increased the cost from 1300 to 1550. Yeah, 60 health. I don't. The pricing on health. What is this? 250 extra gold is not worth 60 health. Not worth it at all. This is a straight nerf. Much more expensive. So, sorry supports, you need more gold now to buy your Sightstone, and that's going to make things more difficult. I'm going to have to redo my build pattern on supports in this new version. Giant's Belt straight nerf, health just straight up reduced, same cost, less health. Wormogs straight nerf, same benefits, but they changed the cost. Now you need a second rejuve bead instead of one rejuve bead. Now you need two. And they've increased the cost from 2650 to 2830. This is a good change. Wormogs was way too cheap. For 2650 gold to get 1000 health for 2650 gold was much too undervalued. It was much too cheap. Everyone and their mother was building Wormogs. We've been building them on champions like Ezreal just because it's so cheap to build Wormogs and get 1000 health. This brings it more in line with the correct pricing. If anything, it might still be a little cheap because the health regen on Wormogs is also very significant too. Anyway, Sunfire Cape. They are nerfing Sunfire Cape as well. They've increased the combined cost and the total cost has gone up by 150 gold. So just a straight nerf. Again, what are they doing in this patch? Nerfing health. Nerfing health from Sightstone, from Giant's Belt, from Wormogs, from Sunfire Cape. Health is too cheap. And they're making it more expensive across the board. These are good changes. It was too easy to stack health. So again, that means champions like Olaf that like to stack health are even sadder now that their core items are being more expensive. Okay, Fiendish Codex. They are removing the Mana Regen, removing the Fairy Charm from the Fiendish Codex. And so they've made it cheaper and they've pulled out the Mana Regen. And this is to allow them to put Fiendish Codex into some alternate build paths. So let's look at what they've done here. Let's see. Nashor's Tooth. Does Fiendish Codex build into Nashor's Tooth? Oh, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I believe that it does. I believe that it does. Anyway, they've cheapened the cost of Nashor's Tooth, reduced from 2,500 to 2,270, but it no longer has mono regen. So this is a slight buff to Nashor's Tooth, but it's mostly just a repricing to remove the mono regen. Now this, and the champions that actually do build Nashor's Tooth, which right now is Kale and Aurelia, are the two that mostly build this. They're probably going to like this change a bit because neither one really needs mono regen that badly. And just making the item cheaper to give them all the other stats, the attack speed and the cooldown reduction, they're probably going to like that quite a bit. Banner of Command now has a much better recipe. Banner of Command built out of a catalyst, which made no sense because Banner of Command was clearly meant to be a support item. Or wait, no, did it? Or no, actually, is it the Ohm Wrecker that builds out of a catalyst? Well, anyway, this is still a better recipe. This is clearly intended to be a support item, and now it builds out of support items. Fiendish Codex, Emblem of Valor, and then extra gold. And they decrease the price slightly. So this is a better recipe, but no one really builds this item. Perhaps we'll see Counter Logic doing this with one of their weird split pushing strats and use those promoted minions, but I really have not seen anyone build this item in solo queue or in the games I've played. Maybe we'll see someone use this with a push strat, but I have yet to see it used. DFG reworked a little bit. They've made it more expensive. They've increased the ability power. This doesn't change it too much. The Fiendish Codex means that there's no longer mono regen on Deathfire Grass, which makes sense. This is just the item you buy if you're a burst caster and you want to kill the other person immediately. Still, this is probably a slight nerf just because of the increased gold. I mean, they increased the cost by 10%. Yes, the ability power is nice, but this means it takes longer to get your DFG, and it takes longer for you to be able to start one-shot killing the other side if you're Evelyn or if you're, I don't know, another burst caster like Annie or Malzahar or something. So this is pretty much a nerf. I would not by much, but it's a modest nerf, I'd have to say. Morellonomicon has been reworked again, and again, this is clearly intended to be a support item. Fairy Charm, Fiendish Codex, and Lucky Pick for the Morellonomicon. It feels like it's supposed to be a support item. Still not that popular at the moment. Unholy Grail, they've reduced the cost. Again, this is because the mono regen was taken out of the Fiendish Codex. That said, the champions who build Unholy Grail would still probably like this change because the item is cheaper overall. It is about 7 or 8% cheaper now, 2,600 instead of 2,800. So this feels like a slight buff to Athene's, even though granted, yes, you're not getting the same mono regen as you did before. At least I don't think so. I'm not entirely sure. I'm assuming that you're losing the mono regen from the Fiendish Codex. That said, the champions who want Unholy Grail are still going to prefer this because it's just cheaper now. And the reason why people build this is more for the cooldown reduction, for the magic resist, and then for the ability power. So Lux, Orianna are going to like this change, I think. Bloodthirster, big nerf to Bloodthirster. They just straight increased the cost, 3,200 instead of 3,000. So remember how at the start of Season 3 it was 80 Assassin, 80 Assassin, 80 Assassin, Talon everywhere, Pantheon everywhere. Since then, these things have been steadily getting nerfed. Bloodthirster has gotten nerfed. Black Cleaver getting nerfed again. I'll talk more about this in a minute. Last Whisper has gotten nerfed. All those champions individually have gotten nerfed. So we are seizing an end to the reign of terror of the AD assassins, which is, I would say, a good thing. The game balance was very much out of whack right when the new Season 3 changes went through. So Bloodthirster just straight up more expensive. This is good news for ADs that like to build Infinity Edge. This means that it'll be easier for them because it's going to take the champs who build Bloodthirster longer to get their BT. So this favors champions that like Infinity Edge. This is good for Ashe. This is good for Caitlyn. This is not good for champions like Graves and Vayne, who are very dependent on Bloodthirster. Then Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver getting nerfed again. This is like the third time that Black Cleaver's been nerfed. They reduced the health again down to 200 from 300. Max stacks increased, which sounds like a buff, but it's not because they reduced the armor reduction per stack. So now you must get 5 stacks to get the same amount of armor reduction. So Black Cleaver gets gotten nerfed over and over and over again. Remember when Season 3 patch came out and it was League of Black Cleavers? Well, not the case anymore. Black Cleaver has been nerfed back into, well, I would say it was balanced before. Now it might be starting to get underpowered a little bit. So we'll see. Might want to stop with the Black Cleaver nerfs there, Riot. You're getting to the point where the item's just going to be terrible again. Trinity Force. Trinity Force, they changed the combined cost. It is now a combined cost of 3 gold. So the item is 3903 instead of 4200. This is a good change. Trinity Force was over-nerfed in Season 3. Everyone was building it in Season 2. Then they over-nerfed it. Everyone stopped building it. So perhaps we will see Trinity Force come back in some of the item builds. Everyone just started building Iceborne Gauntlets or Frozen Fist instead of building Trinity Force. So this is a good change. Spirit Stone, they reduced the combined cost, so it's now 700 gold instead of 800. Another good change, the word around town was Spirit Stone was not very good. Most junglers, some junglers were building this, but it just wasn't that popular of an item. The general sense was that Spirit Stone was pretty underpowered and it wasn't really that good. And a lot of people are just building Madrid's Razor instead, even if they left it there. Or sometimes just leaving it on Maokai. I saw a lot of people just buying a Hunter's Machete and never upgrading it, just leaving it as a machete. So this is designed to make Spirit Stone more appealing, and I think we will not see people just building the machete. For a combined cost of 40 gold is so, sort of pathetically inexpensive that Riot wants people to build the Spirit Stone. I think we will see a little bit more of that. Spectral Wraith. They have drastically reduced the combined cost by 300 gold. Total cost reduced from 2,400 to 2,000. What is that? That's about a 15% cost reduction. No one is building this item. This item is commonly considered to be terrible, so perhaps we'll finally see people starting to build this. They've buffed it now in the last 2 patches, which gives you an idea of just how weak it was when it first came out. So maybe we'll finally see AP junglers starting to build this, but what they probably should do is just do something about that spell vamp. The spell vamp on it just feels misplaced. It's not really doing much for junglers to have spell vamp on this item. I would think that what they should do is they should just get rid of the spell vamp and then give it something else, more ability power, or I don't know, something else, more cooldown reduction or something that an AP jungler would want. Maybe even stick tenacity on this thing. I don't know. Although I guess that's more what the Spirit of the Ancient Golem is supposed to represent. But this item has just not been in a good place. So maybe I'm thinking Riot probably just figures let's drop the cost and see if people start buying it. Frozen Heart, really minor buff. They dropped the cost by 100 gold. Seems fair. A lot of people stopped building Frozen Heart. It was considered to be weaker than items like Warmogs and Randuins, so perhaps more people will buy that. But it didn't need much help. And then Doran's Shield got a buff, and actually a sizable buff here. The health regen increased to 8 per 5 instead of 5 per 5. From 5 up to 8, basically. And again, that's quite a bit of a buff. Not many people are buying Doran's Shields. Perhaps we'll see some more of it. But this was a very niche item. Perhaps it will come into more use. Matchmaking. Big change to matchmaking. Now they're going to take into account number of wins in matchmaking, something Riot always said they didn't want to do. I'm a bit conflicted about that because I've always personally felt that winning a lot of games didn't really have anything to do with player skill. Oh, sure, for the first, 100 games you play, of course it matters, but I don't really think there's much difference between someone who's played 300 games and someone who has played 1,000 games. Skill is skill, and the number of games you played I don't think really means that much. Well, anyway, that's how I've always looked at it, but a lot of people feel differently, and number of wins is now going to be included, which is great for me because I don't have that many wins, and it'll underrate me in matchmaking because I don't play that much in solo queue. So this is great for me. Now it's going to undervalue me because I've played so many custom games. So this is perfect. So as far as I'm concerned, that's great. But I've just seen a lot of players. I know some people who've been playing this game since 2010, and some of them are just dreadfully bad at this game. So just because they have 1,000 wins doesn't mean that they're any good. Anyway, but that's the change. So a lot of people, this had been heavily requested in the player base. And it's in the game, so just be aware of it now. Other updates, let's see, blah, blah, blah. We've made database updates. Your previous games, 10 games will not show up. So again, hiding more information. I'm not quite sure why Riot wants to make it impossible to see how you've done in your past games. I'm not sure why they try to hide that. Don't really understand that. Tenacity is now on the character stat. That's kind of nice. Champions that reduce the duration of disabling effects now get tenacity instead. This makes sense. This is just a little bit of a clearing up. From some of the champions that had older kits that were created before tenacity existed. And it now stacks with item, mastery, and cleanse. Oh, I believe I believe that this was the case already. But it's nice to see that cleaned up a little bit. And you'll be able to check on the character screen to see just how much tenacity you have. Alright, fixed a bug with the Rengar Kha'Zix's hidden passive that almost never comes into play. Fixed a bug where chat messages from Anivia would be weird if she was in egg form. That's weird. Oh, and inhibitors and turrets now show up on the side screen too for kill callouts. Interesting. Okay. Co-op versus AI, bots will occasionally chat. I heard about this happening and people were like freaked out when the bots suddenly started talking in chat when they hadn't known that this was going to happen. They've added J4 bots, Jarvan bots, and improved retreat logic. Okay, just little quality of life stuff. So overall, pretty solid patch. Mostly good changes. A little overboard in one or two cases. Mostly pretty good. In terms of stuff, I think the Katarina they might be going a little too far with Cat. And what was the other one? Olaf, they might be going a little too far, but they're both very strong champions at the moment, so we'll see. Mostly good stuff, quality of life changes, improvements. This item is the best improvement in the patch, in my opinion. Seeker's Arm Guard is a very necessary hole in the game's itemization. It's good that they're fixing that. And the Sightstone thing is going to affect supports quite a bit. We will have to see just what they do with that, but that's going to take a little time to get used to that. Otherwise, pretty good, and we'll see what the new league system is like. Again, I don't want to sort of render judgment until I have a chance to see it operating in practice, so I will have to play around with this and see how it shakes out, see what it's like. My one piece of advice to people who are going to be playing under the system: if you're in a placement match for the next tier, don't tell people that you're in solo queue with that you're in a placement match, because it's probably going to make it much more likely that you'll get trolled by other people. So just don't tell people if you're in a placement match, because some people will just see that and their eyes will light up, and then they're going to lock in like the revive barrier Eve or something like that. No, lock in revive Ghost Karma or something and just mess with you. And you can't dodge in Champion Select under the new system. So just keep it quiet if you're playing in one of your promotional matches. Anyway, that's all for now. Once again, hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll try to do this for upcoming patches. People said they liked it last time, and so I'll try to continue that. Anyway, have a great weekend, guys. See you again soon. See you on Wednesday for the YouTube night. Until then, take care.